Yes?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh my God, I feel very important now. Okay. Okay. Are we on?
I don't know.
He just walked back there, so I would imagine.
The white light is on up there, the one that says on air.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our first HRC meeting of 2015. This is a meeting where we are going to take up many of the agenda items that we had originally planned for December, but we were washed out by the big storm of the century. So we will begin tonight with roll call.
Commissioner Alasani,
Here.
Vice Chair Piketty, Commissioner Chen, Commissioner Morin, Chair Onan,
Here.
Commissioner Savage,
Here.
Commissioner Stone.
Here.
Thank you.
And then we will see whether we have any agenda changes, deletions, or requests. Does anyone have any items they want to move around on the agenda? All right, I think we're good there. Do we have any oral communications? Doesn't look like it, okay. And were there minutes that we're approving tonight? I know I had sent some changes back. Okay, so that was for the minutes for the October 9th meeting, which we were all asked to review and send changes back to Mary.
And November 13th.
November 13th.
Oh, okay. I thought it said here they were the October minutes. Oh, okay. Okay, sorry. I'm reading the wrong thing. The November minutes. We used to get so far behind that it's exciting that we're so caught up on our minutes now. Does anyone want to make a motion that we should approve the November minutes?
I'll make a motion.
All right, and any second?
I second.
All right, thank you. So all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? All right, then we have approved our November minutes. Thank you. All right, now let's move into the business of our meeting. The first item is related to our work with HISRAP and CDBG, and we are getting into the funding cycle for those items, so we're going to need to form a selection subcommittee. I don't know, Minka, did you want to chime in and explain a little bit more about what we need as far as participation on that subcommittee?
Right, so we're looking for 2 to 3 HRC members to serve on this committee to look at both the CDBG and the HISRAP applications. Those HISRAP applications, the deadlines are next Tuesday, and I believe this week the CDBG deadline has already happened. So this commitment will include minimally 2 to 3 meetings of probably at least 2 hours each. It will include reviewing those applications. So I don't know at this moment how many are coming in for CDBG. For HISRAP, we're still waiting out, but that's probably, we'll be honest, it's probably going to be at least 15 to 20 applications for the combination of the two. So the committee will meet. We'll probably discuss CDBG first, and the planning staff will lead that process to review those applications, and then we'll move on to the HISRAP applications. It is our hope to get those applications out to those that are on the subcommittee by the end of next week. They will be available electronically, and we can create binders for commissioners if they want. And then we're hoping within a reasonable, probably 10-day period, I'll take some feedback from all of you tonight, or whoever decides to be on the subcommittee, and then we will start meeting to discuss it. So either the last week of January or early February. It is the hope that these recommendations would come to the HRC at the March meeting and scheduled to go to the Finance Committee in April.
Minka,
Yes,
just one point of clarification. So the meetings of the subcommittee will be the last week of January, first week of February, is that right?
That is what I think is most reasonable at this point. Maybe the second week of February. We have some flexibility in that it's not going till the March HRC meeting, but we do want to give a reasonable time to review and then starting to meet. Again, sometimes it just takes 2 minutes, two meetings. When we had meetings regarding the extra 64,000 last year, that was 2 meetings, and now we're discussing, a couple $1 million. So it may be more. But last time we did it, it was 3 meetings to the best of my recollection when we did it 2 years ago.
Yes, and just to reiterate, it's kind of a 2-part process. One part is, of course, reviewing the proposals that have come in from HISRAP and CDBG applicants. And that you can kind of do at your leisure, well, leisure, speaking broadly. Review them electronically or the printouts, make your own notes and come prepared. Then the meeting is actually very productive because everyone is familiar with the applications, and we can talk about needs and priorities and the budget and so forth. So that one part can kind of be done on your own schedule, and then the one part you do have to make the commitment to come to the meeting. So it's intense, but it's over quickly. And I really encourage people who haven't done it before to step up and take a whack at this, because it's very important work that the HRC does.
So I would like to volunteer because I've been in commission for like 4 years and haven't done it yet. I really wanted to try to.
So I think the best process would to see who wants to volunteer, and
Yes.
then it would be a vote.
Okay.
Yes. All right, so Commissioner Chen has offered to step up, and Commissioner Stone as well, which is wonderful. Do we have a third person who'd like to be part of the committee?
My only limitation is I'm out the first week of February, but if calendars can accommodate that, I'm happy to volunteer.
Okay, so then we have 3 that are willing to make that time commitment to both review and attend the meetings. And the other add-on item I would say is that when your recommendations would come to the full HRC in March, the people who served on that subcommittee would sort of be the vanguard of explaining to the rest of us what your thought process was, how you prioritized the applications, and how you came up with the recommended allocations that you did, because that then has to be communicated to council, and they may have questions for us there too. So all of us need to be fully conversant on what was decided.
Can I volunteer and make it 4 people?
Can you pressure red button?
May I volunteer and make it 4 people?
Are we allowed to do 4, Minka?
It would be 3, so then if there's 4 volunteers, then you would just have some type of voting process to decide the 3, because 4 would be a quorum of the HRC.
I mean, if Ray wants to be the 4th person on the subcommittee, can we have a subcommittee of 4? Or are we limited by the Brown Act to 3?
I believe we're limited by the Brown Act to 3, because that's a majority. The HRC is 7, so a majority would be 4.
Okay.
So all subcommittees are limited to less than a majority of the committee.
Okay. So are there, I'm sorry.
Just a clarification, is this subcommittee for both HISRAP and CDBG?
Yes.
Well, we have, okay.
Well, that was a point, though, that I just wanted to make. Perhaps we could arrange for the first 3 of you who volunteered to be on either HISRAP or CDBG, and then if there are other people who want to step up to do the other half, that might be a nicer, more equitable distribution, because CDBG is not quite as heavy-hitting as HISRAP, as I recall, but it's a lot to take on. I mean, because there's all the federal government regulations and stuff that go along with the various projects. So perhaps splitting it that way might give more people a chance to participate.
That's possible. I know it's sometimes helpful, but maybe staff could carry that responsibility. But sometimes, although the applications, if you apply for CDBG, it's not that we can say at the meeting, oh, let's fund them with HISRAP instead. That cannot happen. But sometimes we think, okay, the city together has this pool of X amount of money if we consider CDBG and HISRAP together. Do we want to, for instance, allocate 80% of it towards one type of service? And when it's the same people on both committee, there's that joint memory. But I think that's something that staff could carry if we want to do it, that you maybe 2 people for each.
Okay.
I don't know, that's definitely a way of doing it, and that would lessen the load on everybody.
Yes, the other option perhaps would be for one person to be sort of the double agent who might be willing to do both.
That would probably be quite helpful if there was one on both, but. with
Yeah.
4. I'm still not sure how.
And so of the
Yeah.
three of you who are interested in serving, were you interested more on the HISRAP side or on the CDBG side, or are any of you interested in doing both?
I'm interested in his rep side.
On the HISRAP side,
I
okay.
could do a double agent if that's, because I mean, I don't have a job. Well, I'm retired.
Yeah,
So I
phrase
might
that
have more
correctly.
time.
Okay, and what about you, Commissioner Stone?
I'm fine either way. I don't know much about CDBG, so it'd be a good learning experience, but I am interested in seeing how his rap being on our subcommittee last year to see how this part of that process works, so.
Okay, so you're interested in either, but you have a preference for HISRAP?
Correct.
Okay, and so Commissioner Bichetti, what was your preference? Did you want to be on the HISRAP side or on the CDBG side or both?
His rep.
On the HISRAP side, and so Commissioner Alasani?
So I'll go where I'm needed, so.
Okay, well, how about, I'd like for Commissioner Bichetti to have a chance to serve on HISRAP because this is kind of his last chance before his term ends.
Yeah.
So Commissioner Al-Hassani, and I think you were on HISRAP with us last year, so would you mind being our CDBG, one of our CDBG people? Okay, that would be great. So let's say our HISRAP, do we need to vote on this or can we just?
Yes, you do.
Okay, well, let's say in theory then, before we take the vote, that HISRAP would be Commissioner Stone, Chen, and Bichetti. On the CDBG side, it would be Commissioner Al-Hassani. Are one of the three of you willing to be a swing person onto Commissioner Chen is also willing to be on the CDBG. And if we need a third for CDBG, I'd be willing to serve on that as well.
I didn't know.
I think Commissioner Stone, you just wanted to be his rep. That's your preference, correct?
The preference, but
Oh.
doesn't matter to me.
Okay. All right, so I think we've got it covered. Now, is everybody okay though with the proposed assignments before we take our vote?
Yeah, can you repeat it so that we can get it clearly for the minutes and my record?
Okay, so I think what we've come up with is on the HISRAP subcommittee, we would have Commissioners Stone, Chen, and Bichetti. For CDBG, we would have Commissioners Chen and Al-Hassani. And if we need a third person for CDBG, Commissioner Stone is interested, and I would also be willing to step in if we need a third person for CDBG.
I don't think you need a third person, but it's definitely open to you, so it's probably best at this point to
decide.
take that vote and decide to have a third person,
Okay.
if you want.
So Commissioner Stone, are you willing to be another swing vote to be on both committees? Or is that going to be too much for you? Because it is a bunch of reading and more meetings.
If you don't, this one's not going on there. But if you don't want to be on the CDBG, I'm happy to be on there as well.
Well, I've done it, I think, a couple of times, so I'm happy to kind of help other members of the commission have an experience. You know, at some point, we need to pass the baton on to you, vibrant young people. And so I kind of like to do that, but I don't want to overwhelm you. You'll be getting into your final semester of law school, and I want to make sure you're not tearing your hair out and your books apart trying to get to meetings and do all this reading in addition to all the law studies.
Well, it started today, and I haven't pulled out my hair yet. What's
right.
left? So let's do it.
All right, so then so it sounds like then we would have then two people, Commissioner Stone and Chen, who would both swing over to CDBG, supplementing Commissioner Al-Hassani. I think that would be great because I think you can share the HISRAP thinking on the CDBG side and make sure that we're optimizing all the funds. Okay, so can we put a formal proposal then together for a vote? All right, so I'll go ahead and make a motion that our subcommittees will comprise the following. For HISRAP, it will be Commissioner Stone, Chen, and Bichetti. And for CDBG, it will be Commissioner Stone, Chen, and Al-Hassani. Do I have a second?
Can you do it in 2 votes?
On 2 separate votes? Okay. All right, so I make a motion that our HISRAP subcommittee consists of Commissioner Stone, Chen, and Bichetti. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Does anyone want to speak to their motion? Other than to say, yay, we got people to volunteer? All right, in that case, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone who's opposed or abstain? All right, we have our HISRAP subcommittee. Now let's do CDBG. I'd like to make a motion that our CDBG subcommittee consists of Commissioner Stone, Chen, and Al-Hassani. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. Does anyone want to speak to their motion? Okay, then let's take the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed or abstain? All right, then we have our CDBG committee. Thank you, staff, and thank you, commissioners, all of you, for stepping up. Appreciate that very much. And I'm so relieved I don't have yet more meetings I have to go to at that time. All righty. So is there anything else that staff wanted to mention about the either CDBG or HISRAP process that we should be aware of?
No, we'll get the information to you as soon as possible. I guess what would be helpful, because that would, that's Mary's workload for next week. So for the HISRAP committees, for Commissioners Bacchetti, Stone, and Chen, all of this is electronic now, or we can print you out and create binders for you. So why don't we just raise a hand for those 3 commissioners who would like a binder of it all printed out so you can read it. Okay.
It is
And
kind of
then
helpful to
for,
make notes.
And then for CDBG, so that's Alasani, Chen, and Stone binders?
Right.
Okay.
All right, we've had to kill some trees, but it's all in good cause.
I know. I still find it easier to do that way as well.
Yeah.
All right.
I thought your generation was really into.
Now, if for any reason any of you have a conflict, can't carry on your duties or so forth, please notify us ASAP. Do not wait until the last possible moment, because these things have to be approved on a certain cycle that's outside of HRC control. And someone will step in to help out, but please give us as much notice if there's a family emergency or something comes up. So thank you very much for your service.
Sorry, Chair Onan, do we need to vote in someone to step in if,
No,
in
leadership
that?
can appoint that person, I believe.
I think that we could just stay with the 2 then, because in most of the years past, it's been 2, so that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, I think we'll be fine. All righty. So we're going to move on to our next agenda item, which is a follow-up on the Affordable Housing Report. So just to give a little background, as many of you know, over the past year and a half, we had a learning series on affordable housing. And from that learning series, Commissioners Chen and Bacchetti had developed a report about for the problems facing our community in regards to affordable housing, and also posing a question as to what kind of role the HRC might play in helping to advocate for changes to the comprehensive plan, ways to advocate for more housing in our community, ways to partner with either other commissions or the city council or other agencies. And in furtherance of that work, Commissioner Chen and I met with Hillary Gittleman, who is, I'm spacing now, the head of planning here at the city.
She is the Director of Planning and Community Environment.
Yes, I always think of her as the new Curtis, so I have to think of her actual job title now. She was kind enough to meet with us and with Tim Wong just before Christmas. I think it was the eve of Christmas Eve. And we discussed with her the HRC's desire to be involved in this conversation, but in a productive way. Affordable housing is a controversial and contentious issue in the community, and we don't just want to come storming in, muddy the waters, and not be very effective. We also don't want to simply write reports and make recommendations that really don't go anywhere. So we're trying to think of what would be a constructive and productive role for ourselves. So at the meeting with Hillary and Tim, they understood, we kind of explained the HRC's mission, how we became interested in this issue, why we're interested in it, and we discussed many different angles that we could potentially be involved in. And this could be anything from helping to manifest some affordable housing for low and extremely low income people, housing for seniors, housing for the homeless, housing for vets, housing for families in need, and so forth. And Hillary and Tim's perspective was that we had a lot on our plate. We had a lot of things that we were interested in. And for us to carve out a meaningful role for this commission, we would need to prioritize and basically pick a lane, or maybe 2, but basically pick a lane. Because there's too many things going on, and there's too many constituents, and there's too many agendas right now for us to be involved in a broad sense. So I think what I'm looking for in terms of our discussion this evening is where and how do we want to be involved in the affordable housing conversation, and where and how do we want to partner with some existing players in that conversation so that we can make a role for ourselves. It's going to have to be a much more focused and defined role than it has been to date. And before we have that conversation, though, I'd like for Commissioner Chen to have a chance to augment or expand upon anything that I've said, because she also attended the meeting and may have a better memory than I do about some of the things we discussed.
Oh, I took a little note, but I think you covered 99% of it. Well, the one thing I want to mention is that Hillary had just told us to be prioritize the things we want to do. And among them, and there's called rentals right. And rental people rent house, what kind of rights they have, and then whether you shouldn't say, that's rent control is a very bad name, but there's some right that rental should have in here. And they will talk about, and she said another area is senior housing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the third area is homelessness. And then she said, well, there are 3 places that, you guys have to focus on one of that. All right? And that, and she also mentioned that, that Team 1 is put together a program agenda to, he's going to discuss with the council subcommittee on this issue, and as soon as he's done, he'll present it to HRC, one of our meetings. Right? And then, and Hillary said, and they are going to speak to the city council meeting in around May 15, about affordable housing issue.
Hillary and Tim have also agreed to come speak to the full HRC at our February meeting, by which time I'm hoping that we'll have some clearer ideas about what we might like to do in terms of pursuing this conversation with the city. So yeah, I had totally forgotten about the renters' rights part of the conversation that we had.
And she said this is probably the first priority that we should be focusing on.
So are there thoughts, comments on what we discussed?
To what extent is the comprehensive plan a vehicle for dealing with housing issues?
Oh, the housing element, that part has been already done. It's now going to the state HCD, is that right? Mm-hmm. And they're trying to get in their approval.
Right,
and that,
but the housing element doesn't really produce housing.
Right.
Exactly.
It's aspirational,
exactly.
and
exactly.
it's regulatory.
Right. Right. And then I don't think we covered a lot about comprehensive planning in terms of housing issue in the meeting with Team 1 and Hillary. Yeah. And she kept telling us that.
Are you saying that from your discussion with Hillary that there's no role in the comprehensive plan?
Oh,
for housing?
There is role, but it's like they haven't put together this plan yet. When they're ready, they'll present it to the council, the city council subcommittee and us.
Well, but presenting it to us is different from our participating in what they eventually produce, and I'm wondering if
how are we going to
role
participate in comprehensive? Well, we didn't talk about that. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think because the housing element's been on this accelerated schedule, that I don't think there's really a role for us in that process for now. That's my understanding. We could ask Hillary about that when she speaks to us next month, but I think they've already wrapped up most of that. It's been largely driven by government requirements for different sites to be identified, different units to be categorized, and I think that's been the focus so far. And I don't know that it's a document that's really designed to help produce more housing, as you said, Commissioner Brichetti. So
yeah, I don't think it is.
Yeah. Well, apparently, I asked him specific about it, and they said, well, he said, they have identified, according to the rule, they have had enough housing possibility identified to put into the housing element. And that's what I heard from him. And specifically, Hillary told us that, and then when they put together something solid, they'll let us know. And how are we going to participate? I think at the time, maybe we could, pitch in, let them know how we are going to be working with them together.
I know for myself, I'm interested in helping to come up with solutions for affordable housing and not sort of more abstract or aspirational statements about what where we could potentially put housing, knowing that we're not actually going to build anything there, because that's what the city tends to do.
Yeah.
And they do that for, as I said, various regulatory reasons. That
Right.
I understand and makes sense. I'm not casting aspersions on the city at all, but from the standpoint of what we've heard from the community, that people are really desperately needing housing, I'd like us to take a role that was maybe a little more on the forefront of helping to engage the community in a discussion around, especially for me, alternative housing. There's been so much resistance to new developments, and this is a very controversial issue, as we've said. But I think that sometimes if the community is better engaged and better educated around what the plans are, some of that resistance might come down, and there might be some solutions that would work for all sides. I think right now residents feel like things get imposed on them and that they're not part of the conversation. They really don't like it, and they've definitely indicated that at the ballot box. So I don't think we want to make that worse. We don't want to keep that confrontation going, but I think we could have a rational discussion as a community around it, and I think there are probably places where some housing sites could effectively work. But I don't know whether our role is to help the city or whether we want to independently engage the community, or if we want to focus on certain types of housing that we want to really work with the city on, or the Planning and Transportation Commission on. There's opportunities for partnership at different levels. And there are also the renters' rights aspect that Hillary mentioned is interesting because rent control is practically a taboo concept here in Palo Alto. But she mentioned that some communities are kind of coming up with a hybrid solution called renters' rights that is basically a safety net to try to help people at least transition without disappearing through the cracks and becoming homeless or even temporarily homeless when rents go up. So that's something that hasn't been explored here in Palo Alto at all. We could do research on how other communities are crafting renters' rights manifestos and then see if that's something we might want to propose to council here. Now, whether it will have any teeth, I don't know. So again, I don't want us to waste a lot of time on symbolic or toothless, kind of possibilities. I'd like for what we come up with to actually move the community in a positive direction, even if it's a small step, versus just do something that's not really going to be enforced or isn't really going to have a major impact somewhere along the line. So again, any thoughts on where we might want to prioritize or who might want to look into some of these issues?
We have an umbrella called human relations, and in effect we represent that perspective. And so that one of the questions for me is, how do we as a human relations commission express ourselves in ways that add value to the larger conversation? And I don't view that as wholly abstract, because it can also be attached to specific proposals or specific kinds of housing or specific programs like the one you just mentioned on renting. Mm-hmm. But it'd be nice if we could add the notion of caring about the relations among humans in respect to housing and how that can be manifested in actual programs.
An aspect of the renters' rights that has intrigued me has been something that many people are not aware of, which is that many of the seniors who live in Palo Alto have been long-time renters. So there are people who living in Palo Alto who have rented for like 20, 30 or more years. And then for various reasons, they are priced out of the community and they don't really have options on where to go. And it's a very, very stressful and difficult situation for them. So these are not necessarily low-income people by federal definitions, but they're often people who never could afford to buy here, but they manage to stay here and rent for a long, long time. And I wonder if that's an area where we might consider focusing in terms of helping to ensure that people have some options for staying in the community, or at least making a better transition out of the community. For example, Hillary had mentioned that there are some social service providers who will basically help people pack up their homes and get ready to move into a smaller place and make that transition out of homes, which can be very stressful and very difficult for people, even when they know that they need to move out of their current situation. They may have decades of memorabilia and so forth, and they just have a really hard time letting go and packing up and getting ready to go. So I think there are a lot of seniors being impacted by our housing issues, whether they're low income or not. There are people really struggling with that, and I don't know if that's an area we might want to focus on, because I think it hasn't been addressed much. You know, there's a lot of, I think there's a prevailing belief that the seniors in our community are well-to-do and all own million-dollar homes, and you know, they can just hire somebody if they need help, and that's just actually not the case. There are a lot of people really struggling. So that's one area that's not been much addressed that we could potentially take on that might add some value to the city and help a lot of the residents in a very direct and real way. But it's not like a policy type of issue. And I don't know if we want to also work at the policy level with the city. Commissioner Stone?
Yeah, I guess that's where I'm trying to figure out where we would fit in that conversation. Are we trying to eventually communicate to City Hall, to City Council about our findings? Or I know you mentioned earlier educating the public, so holding a civility roundtable if these are successful.
They will be.
I'm confident. So what's our end goal here? Because I think we all probably agree on what we want to accomplish and hopefully get more low-income housing and be able to help all these issues that you just addressed. But how do we do it? I think that'd be very helpful to figure out exactly what we want to do before spending too much time on it.
Well, another issue that we talked to Hillary and Tim about at some length was that there's kind of it's a two-way process in terms of getting housing built here in Palo Alto. And what typically happens is that a developer comes to the city or to the Planning and Transportation Commission and wants to build something. And then this lengthy negotiation happens, right? And there's the back and the forth and the I want the zoning change. Well, then you need to give us a benefit and build some affordable housing units. Okay, well then we'll change it to this if you do that. And you know, it becomes a protracted conversation. But I think what we haven't done a lot, or at least my sense from this conversation, what we haven't done a lot is we haven't proactively gone out and said, hey, we're a city that needs XYZ. Who's a developer that could work with us on XYZ? Like, we haven't started the conversation. We're always sort of in this sitting around waiting to respond to something that an outside stimulus brings to us. So I'm just wondering if the HRC could be part of a movement to kind of flip things a little bit and say, hey, let's be proactive. We know we have a problem. We know we're lacking this and that. Let's go out and try to find this and that and bring it to the city, and then let's kick off the conversation within our framework. That's a very different role, though. That's something the HRC has not done, and that's not something the Planning and Transportation Commission does. They also sit and wait for things to come to them, and then they react to that. So there's nothing prohibiting us, but again, we don't want to charge around like a bull in a china shop talking about stuff we're not really experts in. We want it to be meaningful, productive, helpful. But, and that would be a big, big job. And that's something where we would probably want to partner with some of the existing agencies. But I was very struck, this kind of segues a little bit into our next item, but I was struck by Haven House, which is a community in Atherton where families that have been homeless are sort of in transition for about 90 days while their issues are being worked on and case managed, and where more permanent housing is found for them. And Haven House is really, really beautiful. It's beautifully designed, it's beautifully set up. It gives families some privacy and some dignity, but it keeps them in a community where they have all the support services that they really need. And it's in Atherton. So people in Palo Alto that are having problems, you know, families here, there's nowhere in the North County of Santa Clara County to help them. So they sort of have to go over to the other county to get that kind of transitional help. So I would love for example, us to partner with a developer to do something that's equivalent to Haven House here in Santa Clara County, and not just necessarily in Palo Alto, but somewhere in the Sunnyvale, Mountain View, Palo Alto environment. I think is desperately needed and would be incredibly helpful to families that are struggling to get out of homelessness and to get back on their feet. But nobody that I know of in Santa Clara County is leading that charge. I mean, nobody is out looking for a developer partner. Is that something that we want to invest some time and energy into? I mean, that, again, that's a big job, and then that would be potentially lead to a development outside of the city. And then that might be kind of going beyond what, Minka looks so puzzled here. Okay, concerned. But these are all just different aspects of affordable housing. But we could, for example, say, well, Palo Alto residents would be served by a place like Haven House, the Haven House equivalent in Santa Clara County. That might be something very worthwhile then to bring to the North County somewhere. So that's another issue.
I think we need to focus on a certain area, like renters' right. That in renters' right, and what can we do about it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, or senior housing. You know, you have given us a few choices.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have to think about this and decide in what the several choices that you've given us, which one HRC could do the most in
Mm-hmm.
helping them, and then from there we could move on. Is that good for that?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good idea, because we can't, you know, as I said, you know, we need to focus on one aspect.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, definitely. But if we want to be involved at the policy level, then the comp plan is kind of the way to go.
Yeah.
And the comp plan with its accelerated schedule, I don't know if we've really caught this cycle, and we may not have another chance to do so for a while. So I don't know whether it's better to do sort of tactical type projects, you know, or whether to still look for meaningful ways to engage with the city at the policy level. I think ultimately both are very important.
It sounds like from Tim's conversation, it sounds like that they are going to do the comprehensive plan pretty soon, settle on that issue pretty soon with the subcommittee of the city council. So once he's done that and see what he had proposed, then we could certainly talk with him, see what kind of things we can do to modify or help in this area.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So I think that the questions that we need to grapple with a little bit before we move on to the next item are, one is what are our housing priorities, given that there's so many different aspects to it? And two, how much time, energy, and commitment do we as a commission have to step outside of kind of our comfort zone and partner with the city, other commissions, other agencies, and take something like this on? And then if we can kind of come up with a short list of possibilities when Hillary and Tim come to talk to us next month, I think we might be able to really feel them out about what type of role we might be able to play, and then see who among us is kind of willing to take that on. So are there people who have kind of preferences or strong ideas about what aspects of affordable housing are most meaningful to them or to the city that they think are most crucial for us to address? Did you
I
turn
think there's
yourself
also
off,
a
Laura?
point where
Might be too many on.
not too many
No.
should be on.
Well, I think one of the areas where we can, I think a couple areas where we can make the most progress on is one, as Mehdi and I have been working on, veterans, homelessness for veterans, but also the issue that Sharon Ann brought up earlier regarding people who are struggling to maintain their homes and what we can do to be able to keep people in their homes, keep Palo Alto residents as Palo Alto residents. As I think going forward, we have to be mindful of what will be politically savvy and what will be respected by City Council as well as supported by the residents of Palo Alto. And I think those are two areas where we might be able to make a difference, and difference that other people will want to join us in. I do get concerned about sort of going down the rabbit hole and trying to tackle too much, especially after the past election. Don't think we're going to be able to do much in certain areas.
So I just want to make sure that I understood what you said. You're most interested in homelessness problem, right?
For vets.
For vets. And then the second one is keep people in home. That means general homelessness or just the vets?
So no, homeless veterans, and then the second category would be, as Chair Nan was addressing earlier, though that part of the population that's struggling to stay in their homes or to be able to pay rent in the city and find ways to be able to keep them there.
Keep people in the home.
Right.
And all the people who are struggling.
Hopefully everyone who is currently renting or currently affording a house or whatever
Not
to be able to
specific
keep them there.
population.
Right.
Because she talked about seniors as
The
well.
residents.
Yeah.
Right, and seniors would definitely count.
Commissioner Al-Hassani, I know you've been working on the whole topic, oops, let me get back on here. Commissioner Al-Hassani has been working on the issue of homeless vets. Do you think this is something you might want to prioritize in terms of if we jump into the affordable housing conversation? Is this a topic area or focal area that you think might be a good lane for us to pick in terms of engaging with Hillary?
I mean, I would for sure love it if we made this a focus. You know, what I would say is, having done some of the research so far, is Santa Clara County has the highest percentage of homeless veterans in America. And part of the issue is a lot of the resources, though, serve San Jose. And there's some really great organizations doing work in San Jose. But, you know, the truth is Palo Alto is not San Jose. It's the same distance from San Francisco. And there aren't as many resources, as you said earlier, in northern part of the county. So, for sure, I would love it if this was something we could raise with Hillary as well.
And can you remind us, I think, did you say there was like 100 and some homeless vets in our city? Over 100? Is there a count, or is it one of those numbers where it's shifting all the time?
Well, I can tell you how much the Community Technology Alliance in their database gave me a number that I can get for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But as I recall, it's not huge. It's like a,
Well, the Palo Alto population is not huge, but the Santa Clara County population is actually significantly.
but in terms of trying to serve people in our city.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I might be able to help out Commissioner Al-Hassani there from our meeting. I have the note here. As far as what you told me at the last meeting, we have 40 homeless vets in Palo Alto.
Yeah, I think it's 40. Yeah, I think 41 actually from that was served in an organization that uses Community Technology Alliance's HRS. Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And then Commissioner Bicchetti, you're the ones who had started this whole process off. And do you have any special areas of focus that you'd like to discuss either today here with the fellow commissioners or with Hillary next month when she comes to talk to us about this issue?
Well, I'm just very interested in low-income housing
Low-income
and diversity, because I think the community is becoming very homogeneous in terms of socioeconomic terms as well as racial and ethnic terms. And I think that's a long-term issue that has to be addressed at the root level, so that whatever is the explanatory cause of that lack of diversity is understood, and we work on what some of those roots are. So, for example, if you take the housing element as not producing any housing but satisfying a requirement of the state, that's kind of an empty circuit. Not much is going to come of that, and not much has come of it. So the question is, how do we step outside that and do something that will produce some housing? That's my interest.
And Commissioner Savage, we haven't heard much from you on this topic, and I know it's not one of your traditional bailiwicks, but since you're sort of our voice of reason, I just wondered if you had some thoughts on what you think might be the most productive way for the HRC to focus.
Well, the veterans, the homeless veterans problem, I think is worthy of attack, but your other proposal, how to keep people struggling in their homes to stay in their homes. It's a noble and ambitious cause, but I don't know as part of the HRC how we can do that. Ooh, sorry. I don't know if that's even in our purview. That one confuses me.
Yeah, that one is very tough because you start to get into property rights and rents and so forth. One thing, though, that I think is within our purview is that if we don't help provide some kind of safety net, we run the risk of people who are not homeless becoming homeless. And increasing our homeless population is not something anybody in the city wants to see happen, but people will go to some extreme lengths, especially if they have kids in school here, to try to hang on to the community, whether that's crowding into an apartment with a friend or relative, living in their car. You know, people do some pretty desperate things. So, you know, the old saying, you know, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I think sometimes we do bear the cost of some of these issues, and addressing them proactively, although it's costly, might ultimately be less cost and less burden to the city. And I think with the huge disparity in incomes within Palo Alto, we're bound to have people slipping through those cracks. So I just wonder about the HRC possibly playing a role in making some proactive suggestions as far as some kind of safety net, so that at least people don't end up on the street or living in their cars, especially families with children and seniors who are vulnerable.
So proactive suggestions to whom?
Well, I think that would be, for example, Envision Shelter Network, in theory, has emergency funds that they can give people, say that they're about to have their power cut off or can't pay their rent, you know, because it's easier to help shore them up for a month, you know, while they're waiting for their next paycheck. But they run out of funds by about March every year. Their whole annual budget's used up within like the first 3 months of the year. So can we think about a program where we have those kinds of emergency funds available if it's appropriate and at certain times? And this isn't just your standard, you know, people falling into homelessness story. For example, I was told a very disturbing story by a police officer, which was that an elderly lady who lived alone had a branch break off a tree, damaged her house seriously, and her house wasn't safe to be inhabited. So the police told her she was going to have to find somewhere else to stay, and this woman had no family in the area, and she really had nowhere to stay. She didn't drive anymore, and she really didn't have any recourse. So even the Red Cross would not help this lady because she used a walker. And they had a rule that if you use a walker, they won't put you up in one of their motels because you might trip on a rug and sue them. So it was like this woman, there were no social service providers anywhere that would help this poor lady. And the police, our police department, basically had to transport her and help her get into a motel. Now, she did have some financial means and she could cover these things, but little things like getting to and from and trying to, you know, make all the arrangements were really hard for her. So it seems to me like if we're a city that's already 25% seniors and that population's growing, we're going to have situations like this. People are going to have fires and falls and, you know, problems. And I'm just wondering about having some proactive services available to people who really need them. Now, obviously, some seniors are in good shape, both physically and financially, and have family members to draw on, but not everybody does. And it might be useful to the city, you know, for us to identify that and maybe suggest some solutions.
Right, and I think I'd like to piggyback on what Chair Anand just said. I think this has been a very rich conversation and one that you're honing down some ideas and then spending some time next month talking with Hillary and Tim about it. I think it's very key to look in what is the appropriate role for the HRC in this, as an advisory body to the City Council, that you look into what policies you want to recommend to the City Council, possibly how it might influence funding recommendations for the funding programs that you have purview to help advise with, but would just caution as you work through this process to really make that distinction between becoming a programmatic body, which is really the role of the staff, and a policy recommendation body. And I think that the council really looks to you, as with the needs assessment, that they are very appreciative for the legwork and the research that the HRC does, and then coming forward and said, you know, this is what we've heard, this is what we've done, and this is what we recommend that the city consider, fund, create a policy for. And I think as you work through this process, you know, looking into those filters before you move forward would be a good idea.
Yeah, yes, I agree. I mean, it's so easy to overreach and try to solve every problem, which we obviously can't do. And I think Hillary was right to push back on us and say that we did have to come up with some focus, yeah. So, but are there any other thoughts about where we want to focus? Because we can expand this conversation next month when Hillary's here, but I think it'd be good to get some things on the board in our own minds about what we're most interested in.
Well, I'm thinking we might want to focus on families with children in the Palo schools who are in danger of becoming homeless.
Okay.
It's more targeted approach, and that's something to consider.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think that's important. That doesn't come up a whole lot, but it's happened enough times now that it is a concern. In danger of homelessness. The other thing too is, we may want to pilot some solutions and start to carve a role for ourselves in a small way now. And in a few years, if we're at all effective, if what we're doing is helpful, if we are able to establish some good partnerships within the city or with other agencies or commissions, that role might potentially grow into something that does become a little bit more ambitious. So that's the other thought, is we don't have to solve everything now, but I think we need to just get off on the right foot so that we are a help to the city and not a hindrance. We certainly don't want to add to the staff's burden in trying to manage a contentious issue like affordable housing. Yes, Commissioner Chen?
One thing Hillary did suggest is that we partner with some nonprofit organizations in terms of affordable housing issues.
Mm-hmm.
Like we talk about the family and children, keep them in their own residence without become homeless. We certainly could talk to Envision, and they are more experienced in this area, and then we could probably help them, extend their policy, their rules to cover more areas, something like that.
Yes, what I've noticed in talking with Philip Daw at Envision Shelter Network over the past few years is his organization does have a good relationship with the school district. And if teachers or counselors there pick up on something going on with, say, a child reports that he or she's living in a car with mom and dad, that they will intervene and they will reach out and they will try to get help for that family. So that's wonderful. That shows that that part of our system is really working. So in that situation, I think the HRC could come in, as Minka had mentioned, at the policy level. Maybe that we as a city should have a policy that we do not have children living out on the street. San Mateo County does have a memo that's been in effect for more than a decade. They simply have a policy that families are not homeless in their county, and any family that's in need gets a motel voucher to ensure that the kids have a safe place to stay. There's no equivalent here in Santa Clara County, none. Not even in a city as affluent as Palo Alto. So at a policy level, maybe that's something that we could advocate for. And if we can't do it at the county level, maybe we can advocate that Palo Alto put a stake in the ground and be the first city in Santa Clara County to make that policy. So those are some options that are really real and meaningful for our residents, but could also maybe have some larger, ripple effect that could be very positive. Okay, well, I've got a short list of things that we can also bring up with Hillary next month. And if people have any additional ideas, feel free to email me or get in touch with Minka and spread it around. So thank you all very much. I hope that we'll come up with a role for the HRC that will have a very good impact on the community. And Commissioner McKetty, did you have any final thoughts? Because again, this was sort of you were sort of leading the charge on this one. Okay, you're good. All right, so let's move on then to our next order of business. How are we doing? We're doing good on time, right? We're doing okay? Okay. To review our HISRAP site visits, I had asked everybody to do, at least a couple. I know some of you got very ambitious and did a lot more than that. And I just wanted to see if people wanted to report on who they visited and what they saw and what was meaningful to them and any insights that they took from that experience. Commissioner Moran?
Commissioner Chen and I visited on the December 15th. We went to visit Sala.
Sala, yes.
Yeah, and senior adult legal assistance. And we went to San Jose and had a very long, very meaningful, I think, meeting with Georgia, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, Basile and Michelle Schroeder, who's working with her. And we got the history, which is, I'm sure you're familiar with it, which is that they've been working for 31 years on that, in that organization. And what was interesting to me, and Commissioner Chen, don't hesitate to pipe in.
That's right, you go ahead.
That there were, fundamentally, that it's they're through the Administration on Aging, and because of the Administration on Aging, they had to move to San Jose. at that time, and they're connected with the Gardner Family Care Corporation there, which I'm familiar with as a family law attorney. Does all sorts of things for lower income families. And they come to Palo Alto, as I understand it, 3 times a month. They're not allowed to select who the seniors are who they meet with. That is, the senior centers can't, but they set up appointments with them. There's a threshold of 60, age 60, I believe. And that one of the things that struck us, I believe, is that it is surprising what a high percentage they have to target low-income seniors, and they said that that there's a significant amount of very low-income seniors that they meet with. Lytton, for example, has a highly subsidized portion of clients there. And she reminded us that, I mean, the term that she used was that there could be professors living in poverty, and that also that clients with higher income can have huge costs at that age and in this community where the standard of living is pretty high. She said that they do domestic violence because private attorneys don't do a lot of domestic violence, which is true, actions, because those, again, tend to be low-income cases, and so private attorneys don't step in that much. And they have 2 senior staff members over 12 years, part-time, and a full-time staff member, and they use law students just past the bar as volunteers, and they were, very interested in having other sources to which to look for volunteers to help them. They do simple wills panel. They have about 1,200 to 1,500 cases a year, and they were interested in partnering with organizations who might be able to help them. They were very interested in Commissioner Chen, I'll let you speak about that, was talking about trying to find volunteers who speak other languages.
Right. Yeah, I think I was told they have lawyers speak Spanish, no problem. They have people, Vietnamese, and then Chinese. But the literature they have is not all in different languages. So some of it just in English. So I said, well, let me look at it, if I could translate, help them out a little bit. But I never received a document from them, so I don't know how to proceed. But they do interested in multiple language helps for different population of people. And I was struck by this incidence, high incidence of their case, the cases is domestic violence, which is very scary to me.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like you guys had an excellent site visit to Sala, and I'm so glad because I don't think we've had a chance to visit them in the past, and it's wonderful that you were willing to go down to San Jose.
There are 2 further insights. One of them is I was actually struck at, I was very respectful of Georgia Basel, which is a difficult job that she has, and not one that's very, that it's a difficult one. That's fundamentally it. I mean, the environment that she was in was not an easy one to be in. But then the other thing she said, which was interesting to me, is that it's difficult to get funding because funding tends to be targeted to more towards younger people. What's exciting to people who fund are youth, education, issues of that nature, whereas with more aged people, more seasoned as I like to call them, they know that there's sort of an end. That was interesting to me. It's less attractive.
Yeah, no, I think that we've seen that across the board, and that's something our whole community has to grapple with as our population does age.
Yeah,
All right.
and the cases they take in a year is more than 1,000 cases a year.
Wow.
Tremendous amount,
Wow.
because there are very few full-time attorneys there.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that updates, Commissioner Moran and Chen. So Commissioner Al-Hassani, did you want to update us on any of your site visits?
Sure. I did two site visits. One was with Envision Shelter Network with, was it just,
Yeah.
yeah, but who am I saying? Was it just us two?
did not go with you on
Yeah, but who else came with us?
Oh,
Is that?
no, was it just the
Just
two?
us two. I apologize.
Yes.
Sorry. And we had Mila from Envision and Phil take us in a van to 3 different places. And what was interesting about that is, I think one thing we underappreciate is we often talk about the homeless population as a homogeneous population, but what they kind of showed us is there's really all sorts of different types of facilities in their network that serve, a different, the word they use is a different tool in the toolbox. So we saw the Opportunity Center right here next to Town and Country, and that, as they described to us, was the ground zero sort of for a lot of people who aren't ready to sort of enter into a rehabilitation program or aren't ready to be able to carry a steady job, but they need some basic services or they need clothes. And so we saw that. And we got to meet some of the folks there, like Helen, who had just got a job, and she was super excited. And Helen, was, they were telling us, was like one of their
Oh, I
best
thought I
people.
was on that tour as well. Did I go with you?
Yeah. And then we went to, yeah, that's what I thought.
That's what I thought. I thought you had 2 tours. I
Yeah,
thought it
but
was
she had to
mentioned
leave
either one.
early, that's what I
Correct.
remember,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Commissioner Chen and I were vying for that position.
Position,
for,
yeah.
That's right.
Sorry. So that was, well, we went to Haven House, as you mentioned earlier. And as you said, it's like an amazing facility. But I will say, like, so it's predominantly for families with children, and they've done a tremendous job. One thing I think Envision does well is get support from the community. So, for example, they had toy donations because it was the holiday season coming up. They had the Stanford football team had built a room for teenage kids because it's not cool to hang out in the kids' room, so they have a teenage room. And we also walked into the kids' room where they were taking a nap. Definitely a moving experience visiting there. And then we also visited the Veterans Hospital, which was a great visit too. Also, they have done a really good job getting community support. I think it was Intel or Cisco that had built them that backyard patio area.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, and they had gotten support from the company to have them build.
I think it was Intuit.
Sorry, I think you're right, sorry. And so the Veteran Hospital basically helps veterans who have appointments at the VA but can't afford to stay, and they're coming in from out of town, but they can't afford a hotel or transportation cost. And we met Paul from there, who's a really nice guy, and he really helps take care of the vets. So really interesting to see a diverse group of facilities. I don't know if you guys want to chime in also.
Yeah. Did you have some more? Did you want to talk about the Envision trip?
It's fine. You cover everything.
Yeah, I'll just chime in with what Commissioner Al-Hassani said, and I thought Envision was wonderful, and they showed us many different aspects of what they do. And I had been on the tour last year, but this was very different. We saw yet more layers, of how they serve the community. And a wonderful thing that Envision is doing now, with some help from the county through Joe Simidian's support, is to have social workers and people who are able to sign up families for food stamps right on site at Envision. So these families no longer have to travel to try to find the government office during the hours. They can just come, in their own neighborhood and sign up, and within a day they can have their SNAP card and start buying food for their families. So thanks to Joe Simidian's support, they have drastically accelerated the process of applying for and then receiving food, which is so important. Yeah, you have to come on Wednesdays. So I was just very impressed with how well coordinated things were and how hard everyone was working to try to give a comprehensive suite of services for people who really need them.
And the other visit we did was also with Chairman Onan and Commissioner Moran, was at Dreamcatchers. Dreamcatchers is a nonprofit that right now it has Stanford students tutor middle school students at Palo Alto High School. It is tutoring, mentoring, also gives them nutritional snacks, and then engages them in various exercises to kind of help their learning skills. For example, when we were there, they were teaching the students how to search for things on the internet and use the online tools that the library and the school provides. So that was also a really great organization. The Stanford students do a really good job. They're really great role models for the middle school students. The middle school students really enjoy the tutorage of the Stanford students. I think that they've done a really good job. It's very well organized. We met Barbara, who's a great leader, and Fairley, who used to be a tutor herself, has now come back to work with the organization full time. So I also really enjoyed the visit there. I also met with Barbara again afterwards and tried to see if maybe some folks from my company could also volunteer for Dreamcatchers, because it's only a short walk.
Oh, that's wonderful. I keep turning this thing on. Thank you, Commissioner Al-Hassani. So Commissioner Bacchetti, I don't know if your health permitted you to do any site visits. Did you have anything you wanted to report on?
I was site visiting the Stanford
Oh, turn yours on.
Hospital.
Turn yours on.
Stanford Hospital and Stanford Cancer Center and a few other places. That's pretty much taken up my time of late.
Yes. Yeah, I had a feeling that was not a good time for your health, but I'm glad to see you with us again, so.
Glad to be here.
All right, thank you. I'll just report briefly that I visited 3 agencies that have been touched on, Envision Shelter Network and Dreamcatchers, and also Peninsula Healthcare Connection. And all 3 visits were really, really eye-opening for me. Our agencies do great work, but they're all hampered by lack of staff, lack of facilities, lack of funding. There's so much more that they could do, and it makes me feel strongly that I want to help advocate for that good work to continue and even to expand. I think it's great for the community. For example, Peninsula Healthcare Connection, I learned that they have a number of doctors at Palo Alto Medical Foundation willing to volunteer, but they don't have enough exam rooms. They only have 2 exam rooms, and so they can only see so many patients, even though there are doctors willing to help. So that's frustrating to me, because that's work that's very, very important, and getting people's medical issues addressed is just crucial to giving them services and helping them transition out of homelessness, or to at least keep them as healthy as they can be. And the idea that there are people who have a need and there are people willing to address the need, but there's no space to do that, is just very frustrating. So it gave me a lot to think about, and I'm continuing to think about it, and I'm really glad that so many of us did get a chance to do these site visits, because I think when you see an agency in action, it just gives you a different sense of what they do. So Commissioner Chen, you want to report?
I just went to the 2, site visits with Commissioner Moran, and then with you, and yeah, that's all I have. It's nothing, not additional things.
Okay, all right. Commissioner Stone, did you have something?
So I visited ACS, Adolescent Counseling Services, last month, and fascinating being able to see the office, meet the counselors, and they're all so incredible and completely dedicated to their task, and especially since it's such a monumental task that they've been forced with lately, with the mental health issues that Gunn High School has been having, and the rest of our teenagers in the city. So it was great to get in there and to talk to them and see what they're doing, and they handle a very heavy load. Unfortunately, I misplaced my notes, so I don't have the exact numbers, but they're going to get back to me on a nice spreadsheet on how many Palo Alto residents that they handle. I think on a monthly basis is what they said they were going to be able to get to me. So that was nice to see. Their executive director, Dr. Ray, kind of showed me around the whole place. It's a nice facility. He also addressed, I guess, their concerns. I mean, they help a lot of Palo Alto residents, and they do a lot of good in this city, but their main issue, which I think a lot of nonprofits have in this city, is that the rent is so high. And they're in a building, I believe, on East Bay Shore, on the other side of 101. There we go. And they're a bit far from where the schools are, so he mentioned that it's difficult for some of the high school students to get over there who don't have cars. And he also mentioned a really good point, and I said I'd have to check. And so Minka, maybe, I don't know if this is a possibility at all, but he mentioned Mitchell Park Library, if there's any space in there where they could see where they could see students after school, and he figured that they now have the teen center there. Maybe there is some spot within the Mitchell Park Library that ACS could operate out of, just like a small satellite office. But that was about it. It was a good meeting.
And Commissioner Savage, did you have wanted to add on to our?
Yeah,
our
well, as you know, I went with you to Peninsula Healthcare, and like you, really impressed with the professionalism that goes on there. And I wanted to add, you talked about the 2 exam rooms, but you didn't mention that they were postage stamp size. Just tiny. It's a really efficient use of space, but for the doctors to see patients in this tiny room, the nurse receptionist is in the middle of the 2 rooms, and she can barely move. I've just never seen such a cramped space, but apparently they're still able to, at least they have something. But yeah, it's amazingly small, and yeah, it gives you food for thought, makes you really think about these. I also visited with Commissioner Moore and Abilities United. And I took copious notes, all of which are on my nightstand at home. Sorry, but again, we were given a tour by the 2 top people, Charlie Wigan and Sheridan Nicolau. And they took a lot of time and showed us, Abilities United is for adults and children with developmental disabilities. And just the activities they offer, art, cooking, they take them out and for outings, and it just, the dedication and the enthusiasm of these people was just enormous and amazing, and I'm so happy that we did that. Do you have anything to add with that?
It was an extraordinary experience actually for me, partly because I haven't had much experience with that population. So first, we were with them in their central office, which is on Charleston, and there we saw what they do to try to train young people, to try to train people to have jobs. So that was one thing. And they also explained to us something I hadn't really thought about before, which is that their mission is to help physically impaired people, challenged, but also developmentally, which can include some forms of, as I understood it, say autism. So we had a discussion about that, but not other forms of mental challenges. So then we moved from there to their place in CAR, what we used to call CAR, and then I realized that Abilities United is what used to be CAR, and so he explained to us how they went through their 3 different name changes, which reflect the culture. We're at Abilities United once, whereas the place had a different name initially, which I don't even want to mention out loud. And there they showed us how they help families with very small children who are challenged. And they have school, they have preschool and school, and they have families there, and it was just extraordinary. It was amazing, the dedication and I believe the success. I don't quite, like you, I left my notes, and if there were some way to reflect how to help them, that would be wonderful.
I wanted to say thank you to all of my colleagues for taking the site visits seriously, getting them done before the end of the year. I think that for those of you serving on the HISRAP and CDBG subcommittees, you're going to find that this legwork that you did is really invaluable in helping you understand the agencies and their work, and giving you a real life context for that, so thank you. All right, so let's move on to our next agenda item, which is to review the work plan items. We can just kind of briefly tell us what you're working on and where you are. I'll start off by saying that I'm on the HISRAP work plan, and we have a number of things coming up in that arena. First, we're going to have our study session with the City Council, and I believe that is in late February. Is that right, Megan?
March 2nd.
Okay, well, that's almost late February. So March 2nd. So I'll be preparing some HISRAP items for the council, and in addition to that, I'll be preparing to meet with both the policy and finance subcommittees to discuss the need for regular increases to the HISRAP budget. Previously, those were in place for many years, then they were suspended about 11 years ago, and they've never been reinstituted. So for the past couple of years, council has generously added to the HISRAP budget, but it's been, one-offs on an ad hoc basis, and I think that we need to make a case for regular increases and possibly a rainy day fund as well. In case there are budget cutbacks in the future, we'd like to try to preserve our HISRAP programs as much as possible and not have some of our most vulnerable residents take that kind of hit when the economy inevitably turns down again. So those are some things that I'll be working on going forward. I was wondering if Commissioner Stone and Al Hassani had an update on their homeless vets project. Any research or progress or milestones you've reached?
We have some follow-up work to do, and I think we're due for another meeting, but I mentioned to former Councilman Gail Price about our project and asked her for some ideas. She said she has some ideas that she'd love to talk to us about. I shot her a note to meet up. And then Minka provided me some organizations to look into, which I started researching. Home First, which has 2 veteran programs, one called the Veteran Enhanced Shelter, which is a 90-day transitional housing program, and another one that's 20 beds for 24 months, up to 24 months of housing for veterans. And the other organization is called Destination Home. And I shot a note to a couple of folks right before the holidays, which I probably owe follow-up to as well.
And for the other remaining work plan items, I think I'm like spacing right now. I think I need dinner desperately. Weren't we working on publicity for the HRC? I'm sorry, yes, Commissioner Moore?
Well, mine are connected, so if you look at number 6, which is update on the possible collaboration, that would be part of the review work plan, so I can very briefly speak to that right now.
Okay, sure, let's go ahead.
So I have had my word tonight, challenges, being in contact with the HRC in Santa Clara County. And I got a call back, I couldn't quite understand why, and I got a call back last night saying that they have been in great flux for the past 2 to 3 months, and that they've completely changed staff. They have 5 new commissioners, and that there's some problems, and that they had a retreat today, and that therefore in the next couple of days I would be able to communicate with either Ms. Altamirano or Ms. Castaneda and try to move forward.
Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, I'm sorry to hear that our county colleagues have been having some stressful events, it sounds like, but if they've regrouped and are ready to go, maybe we can finally start partnering with them going forward. So keep us updated as you work more on that. Thank you.
And I'm not sure if this is correct, but could I just quickly say something about Abilities United? Could I add to our talk?
No,
Too
I
late?
think we've
Okay,
moved on,
all right.
yeah. But you can tell us at dinner.
Thank you.
So, Commissioner Savage, I'm spacing on how to phrase your work plan. Are you working on publicity for the?
That was my goal.
Okay.
I have not, yes, I'm working on it, but no, I have nothing to report. Sorry.
Okay.
But it's in the back of my mind. And the other thing is that, are we doing talking about the civility roundtables
Yeah, we're going
yet?
to move into that, yeah.
Oh,
I just wanted
okay.
to touch base with everybody and
Okay.
give everybody a chance to update us. And Commissioner Chen, did you?
Yes, I got in touch with Deborah Chen, who presented at our retreat meeting in August. And she told me she had proposed her video production project to the city and then got response from city and then said it's going to happen in this year.
My understanding is the city, a colleague in the city manager's office had put her together with a videographer. So I think they're going to have some initial discussions and then come back to speak to staff in the city manager's office.
Okay.
Right. And Commissioner Becchetti, I didn't want to leave you out, but did you have any, because I know that your term is going to be up soon, did you have any work plan items that you wanted to report in on? Okay, you're good.
I've sort of left myself out of the last couple of months.
Okay. I figured as much, but just wanted to make sure. All righty, well, thank you all for those updates. And
Chairman, I have one more
Oh, sure.
quick thing in my notes. I'm the liaison to the Palo Alto mediation program. And so I attended the last meeting, and one thing.
Oh, wait, that's actually, isn't that on another spot on the agenda? Wait, isn't that supposed to be on our commissioner liaison reports or something?
Actually, yeah, I don't see that on the agenda tonight. slipped off, so
No, but, so,
we
no,
can
you
just
go
talk
ahead,
about
go
it
ahead.
next.
Go ahead.
Well, it's nothing super pressing, it's just a member pulled me aside afterwards and mentioned that he had talked to a city council member who wasn't aware of the work that they were doing. And he basically wanted us, if we could keep in mind places where they could highlight some of the work they're doing, so people know about them. So he'd asked me to take that back.
Okay.
So.
All right, no, thank you.
I can talk to them because I'll have to see if that is continuing, but under Mayor Shepherd and her predecessor, there were times for nonprofits and partner agencies to give like a 5 to 7 minute presentation in front of the council. So if you email me, and then I can talk to them about it and see if they're still doing it and see if we can get them scheduled.
Great. I think that's exactly what they're looking for, so I'll shoot you.
Great.
Great. No, thanks, Minnie. All right, so thank you all for the updates on your work plan items. If you have any issues, be sure to reach out to leadership or to Minka. Let us know if you need some help. And let's keep going on that. We've got some good momentum. We want to get a lot of things checked off our to-do list this year. All right, so let's move on to item number 5, which is an update on the civility roundtables and the senior summit. I'll go ahead and talk about the senior summit first because it's impending, which is why my blood pressure is getting higher with each passing day. So this is something new that we're doing for those of you who need a refresher. I'm talking with different social service agencies here in the city over the past couple of years. It seemed to me that a lot of them were facing overlapping issues, and they do have some relationships and collaborations, but I thought it would be a really good idea to just put everybody in a room together and have what we're calling a senior summit. So the purpose of this event is really to try to identify some of the most pressing issues facing seniors in our community, to look for opportunities for potential collaboration among providers, and to try to figure out if there are some items that are missing from the solutions that we may be able to approach the city and county for funding. And it's a bit of an experiment. It's a bit ambitious, but we have, I think, over 20 people who've RSVP'd.
Yeah, we got 3 more today, so
It's a hot ticket, people.
it's a hot ticket.
It definitely is. Joe Smitty is sending his aide, which I'm really pleased about. Councilmember Pat Burt is planning to attend, which I'm very pleased about. And leadership, Commissioner Bicchetti, and staff will all be there. I'll be kind of facilitating, and but I would love it if any of my colleagues can attend. If you want to play a role simply to observe and take notes, that's fine. If you want to play more of a facilitator role, we may be breaking out into smaller groups, and I could probably use some people to help keep the groups organized and on track in terms of responding to questions and getting their discussions productive and getting some output from them. So those of you who are able to attend, it'll be at Lucy Stern on January 15th, which is next Wednesday or Thursday? I'm in a day-by-day mode, so I don't know anymore. One crisis at a time. Thursday. From 1:30 to 4:30, which I know is not great for those of you with work schedules, but if you can weasel out of work or come for part of it, I think it'll be great to have you there. And I hope, too, that this will give a little bit higher profile to the HRC as an agency that takes initiative and sponsors events and so forth. So I'm also hopeful just from a PR standpoint that this turns out to be a success. And, it is, an experiment, so we'll see what works and what doesn't work and carry that forward. And I'm hoping that at least a couple of good ideas will drop out of this discussion and that we may be able to start putting some solutions in place that will really help the seniors in our community. So that's next week. If there are any questions, let me or Minka know. And then moving on to the Civility Roundtable, I'm happy to announce that we have scheduled our first one, which will be February 26th. And this is going to build on to the student film that we saw a few months ago, which was done by Dami and Titi, the 2 young students from Palo Alto High School, called Living in Silicon Valley. So the plan is to show the film over at the new Mitchell Park Community Center, and then to have a roundtable discussion about some of the issues posed by the film. I'm just getting started with that planning because I've been working on the Senior Summit next week, so I haven't moved on to crisis number 2, which is the first Civility Roundtable, but I will get to the next crisis.
What did you say the date was?
February 26th. I've asked Corey Walbach, who's one of our new city council members, if he's interested in participating. He is, but we need to reach out to him and see if he's formally able to attend and be part of the roundtable discussion. I targeted Corey specifically because civility was one of his main campaign touchstones. And since this is a civility roundtable, I thought he was the perfect candidate to come. And he's new to the community. I think people really want to hear from him, so I'm hoping he'll be able to participate. I'm planning to reach out to some other folks, including Barbara Klausner, possibly Ken Dauber on the school board, Sid Espinoza, to see if he might want to be our moderator. And, we'll see who's available and who we can get. But I'd like to put a panel together that includes some of these young people, maybe some of their colleagues or friends from school, and also, some of our city leaders, and really let the kids speak from their own point of view, but also have some of the people who are in positions of influence and power, speak to the issues posed by the film. I want to borrow some of the format that we saw from the Mountain View Roundtable, but I think we want to tweak it up a little bit for Palo Alto. So I'm going to work on that, and I may reach out to PAMP with a P to see if they can provide some facilitators for us and maybe help me do a little meeting planning around how to handle what is potentially going to be a larger group than we've dealt with in the past. So I'd love it, again, if all of you can put that on your calendars and be there. Again, you can be there in a kind of a spectator role if you prefer. If you'd like to step in and maybe serve as a facilitator to help with questions or small groups, if we decided to break out into small groups, that would be wonderful too. I'd love to know I could count on you, so think about that. I think, did we say it was 6:30 or 7, Mary? Did we decide a time yet?
I don't think we recall off the top of our heads.
Okay, well, yeah, we're not knee deep in the planning yet, but it will be in the evening. And we will definitely let you know. I think once the senior summit is done, then I'll be able to really dive into the planning on the second event. So again, I hope you'll all be there. And then for those of you who are going to be taking responsibility for follow-on civility roundtables, well, it's assuming our concept floats, right? But we're all going to cross our fingers and hope that we pull this off and it's a big success. We'll see what works and what doesn't work and what you like and don't like. And then those of you who are the owners of the follow-on events, can kind of craft it your own way. But I'm going to borrow from the Mountain View format and then do some things that I think might work better for our community and then see how the dust settles. So that's what's coming up. Are there any questions or comments on either the Senior Summit or the upcoming Civility Roundtable? No? If there are, reach out to me, reach out to staff, and we will, as I said, start nailing down some of the logistics and let you all know, and you'll all be formally invited. And hopefully, we got legs. Let's hope so. So I think we've already done item number 6, correct? Correct. All right. And then we're missing a few things, like the commissioner liaison.
I'm not sure how that fell off the agenda, but I think we'll just have to leave it be for tonight and add it on for
Okay.
next month.
So do we need our liaison report from you, Minka, or can you not give it because
I
it's
don't,
not
there's not really anything that hasn't just come up in the scope of the conversation this evening, so.
Okay, so then let's, because we need to get to Ofernio, which, we got to have our priorities here. Our tentative agenda for next meeting, I know that we're going to invite Hillary and Tim, and I hope that they're both available, but they have said that they're willing to come, so that would be probably our main event for next time. We might want to do a debrief on the Senior Summit and some further updates on the Civility Roundtable that will be upcoming as of our February meeting. Does anybody else have an agenda item they'd like to toss out for now?
Any interim progress reports on how the two committees are working on the CDBG?
Okay, yeah, and an interim report on the CDBG and his RAP subcommittees. Okay, any other agenda items, potential agenda items? All right, then I think, can we move on to adjournment? Yes. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.